And welcome back. So yesterday we covered what it was like to build your budget and just how rewarding that can be when you figure out just how much money you actually can have left over at the end of each month. This is going to assume that you have been working through that and you've been paying off one debt after another, working your way through your debt, and now you're kind of left in this situation where you've got, some extra money left over each month. And what amounts to a whole lot of money, potentially, depending on your income, at the end of each year. So, let's talk about what this means. I have a fundamental philosophy. I don't think you should have to wait until you're 60 to retire, or 65 or 70 or whatever the going rate is. I think you should be able to retire within 15 years of when you set your mind to it. However old you are. Now maybe that puts you at 60. That's the way it is. You could hustle. You could make some more money on the side. You might pull it in year, 2, 3, something like that. But about 15 years is a pretty realistic number for you to be able to look back and say, I'm a millionaire now, and I followed some dude's advice on the internet about getting my life in order, and I'm going to retire at this point. I want that for everybody. And I am more than committed to sitting down with you and showing you how to do it. Reach out to me, ask questions, leave comments. The more people that subscribe to these videos, the more I know that my work is doing some good for people. So I appreciate it. That's why I'm doing this, is I want to help you guys. So this area down here, we talked about a little bit in the last video. You've got your net take-home pay for the year, what that breaks into as monthly income. Or if you feel like these numbers here are not real accurate, take your most recent pay stub and plug it into this cell and enter how many paychecks per year you get. And if you don't like any of those options, you can do the math yourself and you can plug it in right here, the net income take-home value. Just blow out whatever's there, it doesn't matter. The standard deduction, this is pretty self-explanatory. I've just included the two most basic standard deduction values for filing your taxes. I'm not trying to capture tax credits for children or other things, and this kind of goes through and figures out based off the tax brackets as they are in 2019, 2020, what you're ballpark paying in federal tax, what you're paying in Social Security and disability. This is where the fun starts to happen. And I'm just going to keep that bottom stuff off screen for now. It's distracting. So, decide whether you will use the automatic amount that is generated right here, which matches that number right there, or if you want to contribute manually set amount for each year as you work toward retirement. And so the way this works is the more the better. The more you can afford to set away for retirement, the better off you're going to be. So if you put something in this cell right here, it's going to ignore whatever's here. You can put 0 and it'll still work. Or you can delete it and it'll still work. It'll just pull from this number instead under the automatic amount. So the way you read this is contribute X amount or the automatic amount annually to retirement. Let's assume we're using the automatic. Increase contribution annually by X amount. A 3% pay raise per year and you make $50,000 a year. That's $1,500 extra gross take-home pay. Gross salary that you make. That turns into $1,100 a year that you can put in. I would encourage you to take whatever pay raises you get and put them toward your retirement, if you can. And hopefully, after you've gone through your budgeting exercise, you've realized you absolutely can do that. Or, take $100 or $200 and use it for fun money or saving up for something else. But the goal of this discussion is to save for retirement, and I want you to be really, really serious about that goal. And if you're here, I think you are. And if you've been watching me for the last, let's call it 35 minutes of content, you're probably pretty serious. So, here's what it means. You contribute that amount each year. That means, let's say you contribute 52,000 blah 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 on year 1. Next year you're going to contribute 53,000 blah blah blah. Year after that 54, and so on. And then lastly, this is your charitable giving rate. I think it's important that you give to a charity, a church, whatever it is that is something selfless, that is about more than yourself. If it's a cause that you are really passionate about or care about, or it's to the Salvation Army or the Red Cross or something like that, whatever it is, just be a part of something bigger than yourself. This you enter as a percent. You can say 5% for now, or 10%. 10% based off of what you're setting aside, not your gross income. So now we get into the really fun part. This is where you start looking at your future. This is where you get to see the really fun stuff, the stuff that really lights me up and I get excited about, and I hope you do too, because man, this is where your opportunity lies. Let's say you're like most Americans and you have zero set aside for retirement, or maybe not most, but the plurality. I've assumed a growth rate average here of about 10%. You can change this. You can change this. Oh, I wish. Good grief. If you bought Tesla a few months ago, maybe. This shows what you're contributing each year to your retirement. This shows how much you're giving to charity each year, and what your ending account balance is, or multiple accounts, however it is you align all of this stuff, whether it's Roth IRAs, Roth 401ks, simple or traditional IRAs, a standard 401k, 403bs. There are a lot of options out there about retirement. But what if you're sitting here watching this video and you're 25 years old and you're like, yeah, but Randall, you said you get to retire in 15 years. That means I'm going to be 40 years old. All those retirement accounts I can't touch till I'm 59 and a half. Well, maybe that's where I'm going with this. Maybe those retirement accounts, while really fantastic for tax sheltering purposes, may not be the best place to put your money. Maybe a regular taxable brokerage account where you invest in mutual funds and ETFs that beat the S&P 500 each of the last 10 years, 15 years. Maybe that's where you park your money. Maybe that's where you let it grow. We'll talk about that more here real quickly. But I'm going to continue on with showing you what this sheet's all about. These first two cells, ignore them. They're not really important. You can see your starting balance was 0 and your ending balance was whatever it is. You don't need to know what the growth is. The percent change is infinite. But let's start looking at year 2. This growth rate assumes whatever the first year's growth rate is, just for the sake of simple averaging. And you're going to say, but wait, that's not how the market works. Well, technically you're right. It doesn't. Practically speaking, yes, it does. It has an annual compound growth rate of somewhere between 7 and 12%, depending on the era you're looking at and the duration of that era, whether it's 5 years or 30 years or 130 years. But historically, the market, on average, always goes up. At the low end, it's about 7%. Let's assume for the moment that we have a run for the next 15 years that's a little better than average, just for the sake of this discussion. So let's say we're looking at 12%. 12%, let's say you start saving today. You won't quite hit this $50,000 balance. You'll hit whatever your income allows based off of your budget. But for the purposes of our 4-person family, $120,000 annual gross income, this is about what we could get away with. You start looking at how this grows over the years, and you watch how that $1,000 contribution increases the amount of money that you put away. And look at how much money you're giving. Over the first 10 years, you're giving almost $60,000 to the charities of your choice. I mean, that's big. That's awesome. But you'll be able to do even more than that, and you'll see. As we step down through the years, you're watching your balance and it's just, man, you are knocking it out of the park year after year after year. Wait a minute. What? Congratulations on owning $1 million. Well, wait a minute. How old are you? This is 11 years. 11 years after you started saving, you became a millionaire, and not by a little bit. By a pretty decent margin. 1.15, well, 16 almost $1 million. But it gets even better than this. Year 12, you're at 1.4, 13, 1.6, 14, 1.8. And by year 15, you are a multi-millionaire. So not only did you blow past the 1% mark, you're well on your way to being really wealthy. And so now you can start saying, well, even back up here, the sheet says you should think about retiring. Doesn't mean you have to. May not even be right for you yet, but you should start thinking about it. Because what the sheet is telling you is the growth on your account balance, or your accounts, your total wealth balance, minus your real estate or whatever else, all the things that contribute to net worth. We're talking about near liquid assets, securities, bonds, whatever, things that are growing for you. It grew by $200,000 in a single year. And because you've been doing this for a long time, a lot of the money that you're talking about, if you were to start taking money out of the account, would be taxed as a long-term capital gain, which means for most people it's about 15%. If you're taxed at 15% on this, you are keeping $174-ish thousand of this $208,000 of growth. Assuming the market continued to grow at a constant rate, which obviously it doesn't, but for the sake of this discussion, assume it did. For the next however many years you're alive, you could take out $208,000 out of your account, and it would continue to maintain a persistent balance. And you could live on that $208,000 gross for a really long time. But that's not the point. The point is really the next year, where you say, man, could I live on $208,000 gross yearly? Well, I've been living on 120, so I should hope you could live on a 208. But don't take all 208 out. Take out 140. You just got a $20,000 pay raise for sitting on your butt. And that's pretty sweet. You've left $68,102 in the account, in addition to your $1.248 million. And that money continues to grow. The point is that by growing your money for 15 years and being diligent and being serious about this, that you are able to live the life that you've always wanted to live, and you've been giving generously along the way. Now, I'm not saying that you have to, for the next 15 years, live on Hormel chili or Chef Boyardee or Spam. That's not the point. You got to live some. And once you've got your emergency fund saved up, you should live some. You should, go out to eat once in a while. You should, buy yourself a slightly less used car with cash. You're out of debt. Stay out of debt. Keep it that way. But live a little bit. The reason I say that is because, at least kind of close to me, my parents planned to travel the world when they retired. And so they retired at 60-ish. And my dad had some health problems. My mom had some health problems. They went through that. They recovered. Everything was great. And, they started being active in like Rotary and other clubs around their area in San Diego. And as they were beginning to enjoy their retirement, they were traveling out to see my wife and I here in Austin, Texas. And a drunk driver hit and killed my mother. She didn't get to enjoy the money that she'd spent her whole life planning to enjoy. And so sometimes just think about the fact that, later isn't guaranteed. You gotta live a little bit now. Be wise, but live a little bit now so that in the event later doesn't come, you had at least lived a good life. But, let's go back to happier topics. You're a multimillionaire. And that's pretty awesome. Unless you go completely crazy with your money, you'll probably never have to worry about money again. So at this point, I think we'll pause here. We'll pick up in the next video. We'll talk about, what does the market really look like, and how believable is this 12%? And, what does 10% look like? So we'll dive into that in the next video. And remember, you're in the process of getting wealthier by the day. Be sure to like and subscribe. See you next time.